Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I think we can file this morning's briefing under that moment when you realize you bet on the wrong horse. In news that absolutely nobody cares about, Karine Jean-Pierre, who was infamously the White House press secretary in Biden's administration, has announced that she's no longer a registered Democrat. She's now going to be an independent. Independent? Really? Now that word should never come off of her forked tongue. It just sounds laughable, but that's what she's saying. Like the rest of the Democrat bootlicks from the White House, she was expecting to slither her way back to the white media, desperately hoping for a job from CNN or MSNBC. They all resort to the same playbook. Try to get a White House gig as a way to burnish their resumes, and then when they leave the White House, parlay that into some job working for the white media on a panel, or if they can manage it, doing consulting for some sort of lobbying interest. But mostly they usually wind up washing up at some network, and they try to finesse that into their own show like Simone Mamie Sanders did. But for Karine Jean-Pierre, that road to a lucrative network commentating career ain't been so smooth. Right now, she's threatening to release a so-called tell-all book. That's amazing to me. First of all, Jean-Pierre, if she actually does release this book, she'll be one of the few people in history to have written more books than she's read. But secondly, what the heck is she going to say that we didn't already know? The Biden White House was hardly some fortress of security. They were scandal central. They were a block of Swiss cheese when it came to secrets, including the biggest one of all, Biden's clearly plummeting mental faculties. All of the backbiting, backstabbing, and office gossip that was going on had already made it onto the front pages and the lead stories of the networks before these people could even get their press releases out. I can't imagine what palace intrigue this ignoramus Jean-Pierre could possibly share with anyone, or anything that anyone would even care about. The Biden administration was hardly some pivotal moment in world history, and Jean-Pierre would hardly be able to palm herself off as being some not-so-silent observer, a witness to these great moments. That's the last thing she would be. So, why is it that she's claiming to no longer be a Democrat? Well, that's because there's a number of tethers and bootlicks like Stephen A. Smith who in their little tether brains thinks they're going to reinvent themselves as some sort of centrist bootlick. Jean-Pierre herself has basically hinted at some sort of general dissatisfaction, with even the word betrayal being thrown around. But make no mistake, this isn't about Karine Jean-Pierre's political opinions or what she thinks should have happened during her administration. This is about her own personal career advancement, which is stalled out. Perhaps she thought that she might finesse herself a university gig, but with the way Trump's been attacking those institutions, she can rule that one out. This is her way of basically declaring herself to be some sort of free agent. That doesn't mean she's going to become a Republican. They already have enough low-talent tethers working for them. But it does mean that she understands she won't be able to make a transition from political mouthpiece for the DNC to a candidate of the DNC. Because that's probably what she really thought was going to happen. Clearly, she tried to get the golden nod from the Democratic leadership, get some donor support and backing of some kind for a candidacy, but they didn't go for it. So this is her plan B. See if she can turn her sour grapes into fine wine. She has no chance of ever becoming a shot caller inside the DNC, so as she sees it, she has nothing whatsoever to lose by saying she's unaffiliated with anyone. And speaking of tethers with no new material, Abby Phillip has been repeating yet again the same old shop-worn line that she's been saying for at least the last 6 or 7 months, that it's the activists in the party and elitists in the Democratic Party who are the real problem. So she's demonstrating for everyone that she did not actually listen to what it was the voters were saying last year. I guess that's why she works at CNN. The real problem is Democrats, like Republicans, have decided to silo themselves off in these bubbles, like, say, these cable news networks, and to fill their bubbles with all kinds of white media fantasies and feel-good propaganda. They've been sitting here overdosing on their own hopium. The white media likes to tell itself that it can conjure magic. If they merely say something, no matter how false, no matter how much of a blatant lie it is, then people will believe it simply because the white media said it. They falsely claim that Obama had all of this clout with black voters that he clearly didn't have. They falsely claim that black voters were excited about Kamala Harris's candidacy when we weren't. They claimed that there was going to be massive voter turnout when there wasn't either. They played themselves. But there was something that the talking heads at CNN did discuss that I think is relevant.
Mark and Shermichael, which one? Who wants to take?
We're making your argument, man.
I'm loving this. I think
they're like, I'll just sit back.
Yeah, no, I think y'all should spend more than $20 million on this. Right?
Yeah, the money should be spent for Democrats getting out the vote. And you can look at people like Ruben Gallego in my home state of Arizona, really outperform Democrats, and look at what people like him are doing, and it's authenticity. At town halls, he's cursing, he is going against sort of the Democratic line, and that should be okay if you want.
But here's the thing. They're going to have to, you alluded to this, they're going to have to get rid of some sacred cows, okay? Yep. This is going to be the hard part. Everybody talks about authenticity until the rubber meets the road, and they have to actually take positions that the activist, consultant class base does not want them to take.
I don't think they will. I mean, for Democrats to effectively target men of every color, they are going to have to drastically change some of their positions, especially some of the cultural stuff. I don't think that's going to happen.
They discussed a New York Times piece that said Democrats are going to be spending $20 million to commission a study called Speaking with American Men, a Strategic Plan. So the Democrats are commissioning a study. I think we all know how productive that's going to be. I do find it amusing in a perverted kind of way that the Democrats are spending $20 million just to ask somebody's opinion about how to speak to men, quote unquote. It reminds me of that old saying that when people ask for advice, it's usually because they already know the answer, but wish that they didn't. Because I'm sure that you noticed that neither the Democrats, the New York Times, nor the CNN panel said a single word about any policies. Nothing about what policies these disaffected men are in favor of or have been demanding or that they're saying that they want. If you're going to be pretending to be all hot and bothered about what white men, men think, then at the very least, shouldn't they be able to say, hey, here are the policies that these white men, men are talking about. Here are the issues that they brought up. Shouldn't the conversation be geared entirely around policies, if for no other reason than to say, well, here's some of that weird stuff that these people have been saying that we don't like? No. In fact, they never actually talk about policy unless it's something that they want to shoot down because it's gotten too close to them and too dangerous, or it's something that they themselves want and they're going to lie and say, well, this is what black voters really are in favor of. Because when black men go to the polls, all they're thinking about is abortion, gay marriage, transgender bathrooms, and making sure that there's mass amnesty. There's no need to talk about whether this is going to drive any sort of wedge between black men and women voters, because this men's outreach that Democrats are hinting at, it's not going to have anything to do with black men anyway. That's what needs to be known. This initiative may be a response to what black men did last year and have been doing for several years now. But the goal is to reverse engineer the kind of content that racists like Joe Rogan do. That's what they're really talking about. This is white male voter outreach. It seems Rahm Emanuel and his Biden Republicans crap hasn't burned out in the empty heads of the DNC. This isn't about finding out why Democrats have been losing elections, and it's certainly not about finding out why men in general and black men in specific have turned their backs on the Democrats. It's about finding some way to trick those disaffected voters into getting back on the treadmill to nowhere and resume running till they drop dead. That's the real goal. It's about talking at voters, not talking to them. Democrats don't want or need a study. What they want is to be given a way to fool black men into thinking that Democrats are speaking to the issues that concern us, while at the same time not actually doing anything at all. This is a PR stunt, but nobody's going to be fooled. Black voters, men and women, have made our demands clear: reparations, an anti-black hate crime law, and an end to the targeted police oppression that we've been subjected to. Anyone who comes along trying to give us lip service on those things is going to be sussed out pretty fast and thrown out even faster. Black men are not going to be deciding to fragment themselves off into some sort of separate constituency. There are no concerns that black men have that black women don't also have. We are not being mistreated or denied opportunities based on gender. That may be the dividing line among them other groups, but it has nothing to do with us. Our problem is how this society treats us based on our race. And that cuts clear across gender lines, even if you got some empty-headed fools on the breakfast schlubs who try to tell themselves otherwise. If the Democrats were truly serious about finding out why there's such a massive disconnect between them and black men, then they should have black men to talk about it, the very ones who they're so scared of. Instead, they have cowardly trash like Shermichael What's-His-Name and a panel led by a tether Abby Phillip. Talk about the blind leading the stupid. As always, the white media is not in the business of entertainment or information. They're in the business of mind control. But hey, if Stank-Pierre plays her cards right, she just might be able to get herself a spot over at Roly-Poly's Broom Closet podcast. But this is the Democrats' big plan as they get ready for the midterms next year. More of the same, putting their fingers in their ears and telling themselves that reality will go away if they just shut their eyes hard enough. This is the reason why these bootlicks and these shills who are in the comment section trying to tell us we still need to vote blue, this is why we paid them no never mind. Democrats have had every chance that there is to turn this thing around, but they've made it very clear this is a hill that they're determined for the party to die on. And now we see that the careers of these bootlicks are dying with them, be it Daniel Cameron or Mark Robinson or Kamala Harris. It ends the same way for these guys. Because if it wasn't this, make no mistake, it would have been something else. And if Karine Stank-Pierre thinks she's going to be rebranding herself as some sort of political independent, well, we can put her in the same category as people like Don Lemonade, these cable news castoffs who like to use words like unfiltered for the names of their podcasts. Though in the case of Stank-Pierre, I think a better term might be untethered. So this is what's become of these leftist mouthpieces who had so much to say up until the end of last year. Now these guys are in disarray and they're floundering like a drowning man at sea, desperately hoping to keep their heads above water just a little bit longer. If and when Stank-Pierre ever gets around to releasing her so-called tell-all book, it's going to be in the news cycle for all of one day. There will be some people in the white media who, just because they gotta have something to fill the time with, they'll pretend as if they're breathless with anticipation at the bold revelations that Karine Stank-Pierre is handing to them, when the reality is they got 24 hours in the news cycle, and unless there's been an axe murder or some celebrity scandal, they need to have something to fill the time with. Then again, this is no surprise to us at all. As I've always said, being a bootlick is a career path that doesn't come with a retirement plan. And it doesn't come with a second career either. And just in case there's any people out there who, out of morbid curiosity no doubt, actually decide to get a copy of her book, well, if nothing else, you can use the pages to line your litter box or bird cage, though I'll bet the crap your pets leave on it will stink less than the crap she wrote. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Gwendolyn Langston, Melanin God 504, Alice Ransom, Corey Monroe, and Midget. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.